I'm willing to bet that if you're having trouble getting engagement on your content or getting people to follow your call to actions on your content, you're probably having the same issues with your sales process, your webinars, your video funnel, video series or challenges or live launches or whatever it may be. And the reason why is because the reason why things aren't working in your content is the same reason why it's not working in your webinar. And today what we're going to talk about is something called the conversion content formula. It's how we can start to pull in the right people, become more relevant, drive engagement, but also at the same time, drive more sales. So if that's interesting to you, well, keep on listening.
Hi, I'm Brandon Lucero, and you're about to experience the new way to thrive in business, entrepreneurship, and life by leaning into who you are, what you love, and standing up for what you want to create. Get ready, because this is where we go against the grain, say no to outdated society norms, and we say yes to change in order to create a happier, more fulfilled world. Welcome to the New Generation Entrepreneur Podcast.
Hello, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome back to another episode of the New Generation Entrepreneur Podcast. Today, we're recording from my new studio / office / house. As you guys heard in the episode last week, hopefully these episodes get released in order. Technically, I'm recording this one first, but if you listen to that episode, you know I'm moving into my own place. Unfortunately, my wife and I have separated, going through a divorce, and 2024 has just been a crazy year. It's just like anything and everything that I thought of, well, even beyond what I thought was even possible of going wrong did. And all of it, so much is happening at one point. But I will say, being back in a house where I have my own office, and a big one too, plus a fireplace, it's pretty awesome. It feels pretty good. And I'm really excited. And I'm really excited to dive back into creation mode, more podcast episodes. And honestly, we've been working behind the scenes the last couple of months on kind of a new direction of where we're going. Still within the content, messaging, and sales realm. But I wanted to take our frameworks and our process to another level. And today, what I wanted to walk you through was kind of this new process that we're creating inside of our program, NGM Plus, with our mentorship students. And it's called the conversion content formula. And there's 3 parts to it. And essentially what it is, it's about creating content that is designed to drive conversions, and not only just like sales conversions, but conversions for opt-ins. Like every conversion that you're going to need, we want to have content that's designed for that. And what I mean designed for that, what I mean by that is that it content that gains or gives you something you're going to need in order to make a sale. So we all know in order to make sales, what do we need? We need trust, right? There's 3 levels of trust. We need attention. So we need people paying attention to what we're doing, wanting to learn more, opting in, and all of that good stuff. Those 2 things are really important for sales, but also things like objection busting, coming off as an authority, blowing people's minds, connecting dots that weren't connected before, raising their awareness to certain things, demonstrating a huge amount of relevancy. So you're incredibly relevant to what they're going through, what they're experiencing. All of this stuff helps you with sales. And when our content starts off in this way, what's really great is that it becomes the, key or the gold mine to unlocking sales in your launches and evergreen funnels or any funnel at all. Because when you start putting out content, having fun with it, you're focusing on becoming relevant, you're looking for the right words, the right topics, you get to inject all of that into your sales process. And then the sales process becomes a little bit more predictable now because we already know it works. If it's working with your content, it's likely going to work with your other stuff. So what I wanted to do is break down the content conversion formula. Now, before we do, one of the things that we discovered is that there are usually going to be 4 areas, and I call these it's a quadrant, 4 different quadrants of where people are landing. And I'm willing to bet you're in one of these, and you're probably in one of the first 3 that I'm going to be mentioning. So basically, like I said, in order to have conversion content or engage sales, which means you're getting sales and engagement at the same time, is we need something called aligned attention. And aligned attention is not just attention for attention's sake. So attention for attention's sake would be like you're just being polarizing or saying and doing crazy things or doing stuff that's not normal in order to just drive attention. Um, for example, I'll just give you an example. When I mentioned on stories, when I mentioned on Instagram stories that I was getting a divorce, the amount of views that we had on our stories 7x'd. So we saw 7x the engagement on our stories when I announced that I was, or mentioned that I was getting a divorce. So yeah, I was getting attention, but that's not aligned attention. Aligned attention is attention that actually is good because it's moving the needle closer to someone to get a sale, right? Like the people that were watching my stories when we 7x the views, they weren't watching and gaining. I wasn't, well, let me put it this way. In them watching my stories, I wasn't gaining an advantage when it comes to sales. That doesn't do anything for me, right? That's not aligned attention. So what we need is aligned attention, which is attention that is getting us one step closer to our sales or our goals or whatever it may be. And sure, there is things like connection and stuff like that we need to build. But usually what happens is when people focus too much on aligned attention, they usually are what I call they get broke engagement, which means when you have a lot of attention and people paying attention to what you're doing, maybe you're sharing a lot of behind the scenes, focusing way too much on connection. What tends to happen is you get a lot of attention and engagement, but you don't get any sales. So it seems like it's like people are paying attention to what you're doing, but it doesn't really help you with sales at all. So sales really feel like a struggle. And so when you have high attention, but not enough trust or demand, what starts to happen is you get broke engagement. So it's like these are the influencers and people like that just aren't making any money, but they have a ton of followers and people listening to what they're doing. And then on the other side of it, if we have a lot of trust, so you have a lot of trust, and there's 3 types of trust. So we need people to trust us as a human to human. So this is connection content. They need to know, like, and trust us. They also need to trust our ability to solve their problem. Otherwise, they'll never buy. And then they also need to trust their own ability to follow our process. Otherwise, they will never buy. So the more trust that you have, the more sales you're going to get, kind of. So usually what happens if you have high levels of trust is you get what I call unpredictable sales. And unpredictable sales are usually things like referrals, word of mouth. Again, you have a lot of trust because they trust someone and someone recommended you because they had a good experience with you. And then they go and they buy, but you didn't earn that trust. It was given to you by someone else. So you have high levels of trust, but you don't have a lot of attention. So you don't have the attention, you don't have the engagement, but you have high levels of trust. So you get unpredictable sales. It's stuff that you can't really scale, right? So if you have too much attention, you have broke engagement. If you have too much trust, you have what we call the unpredictable sales. And if you don't have a lot of attention and you don't have a lot of trust, you're what I call the unheard entrepreneur. This is the person who has a lot of really good information that goes out, like information that took you years to learn, probably got degrees in or certifications in, or you have a lot of experience in. You're putting it in the form of content, but you're literally getting like barely any engagement or not enough engagement. And you're definitely not making any sales. So any attention or people that are coming into your ecosystem are essentially just freebie seekers, and that's it. But then when you are able to get high aligned attention and high levels of trust, you get something that I call engaged sales. And this is when you're getting engagement. People are liking stuff. People are sharing it. People are sticking around. They're opting in. They're showing up live, and then they are also buying. So when you have high levels of those 3 types of trust, and then you have aligned attention, high levels of aligned attention, you're getting attention plus trust. People come in, they trust you. They love what you're saying. They pay attention to what you're saying. They pay attention to what you're seeing. Okay. And so we want everyone to be into the engaged sales quadrant. And in order to do that, what we've done is we're still fine tuning it, but what we're doing is creating something called the conversion content formula, which is going to be the backbone and already is the backbone of NGM Plus, which is our mentorship program. And so the way it starts off is with phase one. And phase one is what I call discovering relevancy triggers. And in my idea, in my mind, you literally have to start here. There's no avoiding it. And where most people start is they actually start on phase three, which is where we talk about sales. And so this means like you just put a webinar together, you just put a funnel together, you put a launch together, but you really have no idea what's going to work. You haven't done the testing. You haven't done the research. You literally don't know what's working. So you're just guessing at the topic. You're guessing at the content. You're probably filling it with a ton of just facts and information, and then making an awkward transition to a pitch at the end. And even if people show up, they're definitely not buying. So instead of just starting at phase three, what we want to do is we want to start at phase one, which is discovering what I call relevancy triggers. And relevancy triggers, which you talked about a little bit already, but relevancy triggers, actually, I don't think we did talk about it. No, we didn't. So let's talk about it now. Relevancy triggers are basically language, topics, and words that build huge amounts of relevancy with your audience. And what this means is like, what's the language, the words that are going to automatically get them to pay attention? So if I said, created a piece of content entitled it, How to Create Engaging Content, I could insert a relevancy trigger, which is the word course creators. So it could be how course creators create relevant, or how course creators create engaging content. So I go from how to create engaging content to how course creators can create engaging content. And just that simple word of inserting an identity makes it feel more relevant to my ideal audience, which is course creators. And guys, there's relevancy triggers all over the place. And the biggest ones are actually problems, specific problems. So when you can uncover specific problems that your audience is going through and you use them in content and ads and all of this stuff, and they're the foundation of a lot of your communication, it feels more relevant to the ideal person that you want to attract, because your ideal person literally has a problem. That's why they're going to work with you. And then once we know what the problem is, now we can focus on developing the different levels of trust and connection that we need with them. And so now, again, we're starting to gain everything that we need for sales. So when we have the relevancy triggers, and these are going to be things like, what problems are they going through? And specifically, not only what is it, but how do we say it so that it lands in a way that automatically connects and feels relevant to them? Okay, so the problems, the mistakes they're making, their identities, things like that, we want to start using. And we have a process to help you uncover what those are, to pull all of it out, and then show you how to actually put it into content so that we can test it and we can fine tune and we can see literally what's working and what's not. So the triggers are huge. They really are. They're one of the biggest things that we have to focus on. And we spend a lot of time focusing on these things because it will literally lead us to the best type of content out there. And so I just want to give you guys an example of how this works. So if I said, over the last year, you have never created a webinar that has gotten sales live while presenting. Let's just roll with that. If I said, hey, if you're a course creator and over the past 12 months, you have never made a sale live when you do a webinar, we know exactly what's going on, or something like that, right? There are people that be like, well, I've never had a sale, from a webinar. And then if I followed it up with, and I'm willing to bet that the majority of your webinar is you simply delivering information and steps and tutorials. Now people are like, oh man, I have never had a webinar that converted people live. And I am doing exactly what he's saying. That's hyper relevant to them. It's like, okay, he described the problem and he described what I'm doing so much that I feel heard. This is like, this person gets me. It's like they have a video camera watching me, right? So if I knew those two things, that's copy, that's language that I can use on sales pages or ads or emails to pull people in. and pull in the right people too. But not only that, I can use it as inspiration for content. So I could say, I could create a piece of content that's like 5 signs you'll never make a sale live on a webinar. 5 reasons why your webinars aren't converting live. How to create a webinar that converts people live on the call with you. 3 secrets that 7-figure entrepreneurs are using to convert more people live on their webinars. And guys, I could do this all day long, right? And that's just one problem. So now not only do I have this relevancy trigger, but what I'm also doing from at that point is not only creating the relevancy trigger, but I'm creating content based off the relevancy trigger. And when people hear that content, they're 10 times, and I'm just making that up, but 10 times more likely to pay attention. Because if they're having the problem of not being able to convert live, and I have a piece of content that says 5 reasons why your webinars aren't converting live, it's like, whoa, that speaks right to them, right to the problem. Okay. So that's why discovering the relevancy triggers are so important, because it influences the copy, the messaging, the language, the topics, the content you actually do. And that actually moves us to pillar number 2, which is now creating what I call a demand creating content system. Now that we know what a lot of the triggers are, we use those as inspiration to start creating a content system. So connection content, self-diagnosing content, educational connection content, all of that stuff is really, really important. And again, connection content is there to help build levels of trust and connection with your audience. Self-diagnosing content is getting your audience to come up to the conclusion that they have, they're on their own, that they have the problem that you solve. Thought reversals are going to be thought leadership style content, and educational obviously positions you as authority. But all 4 of those combined are designed to gain things you need for sales. They're demand creating to get attention. They build the 3 levels of trust that you need. And so what we like to do is start putting out all this content, not only to build an engaged audience, but also to help us determine what's going to go into your sales process. So what stories do you use on your webinar? Well, look at your demand creating content system. What stories did you use in your connection content? Which ones landed the most? Which ones were the most relevant? Which ones were the most impactful in your content? Well, then you get to use that in your webinar. So when we create a demand creating content system, engagement goes up, audience goes up, sales goes up. And then once we know the relevancy triggers, we have the demand creating content system, we have all this data. Now we move into the 3rd pillar, which is what I call engaged sales. And what engaged sales are is your ads, your emails, and your sales presentation. Everything is coming from stuff that already worked in your content. So it eliminates most of the guessing, not all of it, but most of the guessing. And what we're able to do is figure out what's the webinar title or the challenge title or the video series or the live workshops you can do. What are the titles? It's like, we'll just look at what was working in your demand creating content system. What's going to go in the ads? Well, look at your relevancy triggers. What's going to go in the emails? We'll combine the relevancy triggers with the demand creating content system. And what's going to go inside the webinar or the sales presentation? Combine the relevancy triggers with the demand creating content system. What worked in the content demands, the content system? What teachings worked? What philosophies worked? Because when we teach you things like educational content, we talk about the persuasive tutorial, which is how to teach without just delivering information. Everything that you're going to need for a very effective sales process is already done for you inside of your content. And then you just plug it into the engaged sales process. And when we have this, your ads start working, your webinars start working. You have a predictable system that's run off of data, meaning that we let data tell us what's working and what's not working. And so this 3-step process has been something we've been using not only in our own business, but with our clients to get people to those next levels, like 6 figures, multiple 6 and 7 figures. And these 3 things combined really have allowed us to scale our business as well. And so when we walk people through and work with people inside of NGM Plus, we have a process for each one of these pillars. But the thing that I feel like is the most important here that I really want you guys to understand is that when it comes to the sales is sometimes just jumping right into a sales process without any research or data isn't always the best thing. It's not always the thing that's going to lead to the most results. And if it does, it's usually because you get lucky. And everyone that I know that's really successful they understand that the sales process, the webinars and all these things, it's an art. It really is an art. And it takes time sometimes. And, I have a friend who does multiple millions a year, and she's been working on her presentation for a year. Even though it worked, she's like, okay, we got it. Let's fine tune it. Let's fine tune it. Let's fine tune it. Look at the data. What does the data tell us? What does our content tell us? And it's just constant research. It's constant data. It's using that data to improve and improve and improve. But again, it comes down to discovering the relevancy triggers, creating a demand creating content system. So you get the engagement, you get the followers, and it's all based off of actual problems that you can solve, which means these would be the best leads that you ever get. And then you inject all of that into a sales process now. So it's using the same data, information, messaging. And what happens also is you create a very connected communication or messaging process throughout your entire brand. So people listen to the content, then they go right into the funnel, they go right into the webinar, and it's one continuation of beautiful messaging that pulls people through, creates demand, builds the trust, and drives attention. So if you guys want to learn more about this, or if you want to see more about this, we do have a webinar going on every once in a while that is going deeper into this. Sorry, I lost my train of thought for a second. I saw a dog walking, got distracted by a dog. But anyways, yeah, if you want to learn more about this, we do have a webinar where we're going to go deeper in on all three of these pillars. So go to our bio. We usually have a link there on Instagram where you guys can register for that. But also there's an opportunity to book a call. Right now, those calls will go to me depending on when you see this video. So if you're like, hey, I'm really interested in having your help implement this into my business, you can book a call with the team. It'll go to me and you and I can dive into what actually is the issue going on in your business and also look at different opportunities we have to help you. So again, I just want to be clear. It's not a coaching call. So if you're not interested in potentially joining our program at some point, don't book a call because we will dive into your stuff and help you and things like that on this call. You and I will do that. But also it's to also talk about how we can help you through our different programs and stuff. So if you're like, hey, Brandon, time is right, you can just go to Instagram. The link to book a call should be in there, or just send me a DM and my team or myself will send you a link. So hopefully you guys enjoyed this episode. Hopefully it made sense to you guys. Start working through relevancy triggers if you can. So simple things like injecting problems into titles, identities into titles are great ways to get started. Or even like if you go the opposite of a problem. So for example, I know one of the biggest problems people have with content is it takes too long. So if I said, and I'm like, okay, the problem is it takes too long. So let's make it quick. So let's create a title that says how course creators can create engaging content in 5 minutes a day. And it's like, boom, there you go. It addresses a problem people are going through. It has their identity in there. It has a benefit in there. 3 relevancy triggers in one title. So if you guys want to learn more about this, go to Instagram, register for our upcoming workshop, whenever it's going to be, or just book a call with me and we'll go through it. So take care, guys. I'll see you all next week.
Hey guys, thank you so much for checking out another episode of the New Generation Entrepreneur Podcast. If you enjoyed this episode, go below, hit the subscribe button, and make sure you click on that bell icon and get notified every time we drop a new episode. Now, if you're looking for the show notes, we have them linked underneath this video, as well as our social media handles and some links to free training and offers that we drop from time to time to help you guys even further. So go check those out if you're interested, and thank you so much for tuning in to the New Generation Entrepreneur Podcast.